guys, it's summer here and today I'm filming my February wrap up because February is ending and I need to start, you know, posting my wrap ups on time because my January wrap up came way too late. Technically I read about like, I want to say like 20 books, but it doesn't quite count. So I'm going to say I read about 6 books, this is 5 of them. And the other one I don't own a physical copy of, and I never want to own a physical copy of it because I hated it and it was garbage. I have nothing else to say for this intro. I never know what to say in the intro, so I'm just going to start the video now. I'm going to start off with the thing that I read that I enjoyed the most this month, which is about 21 of the Black Butler mangas by Lara Jean. I still don't know if I'm saying that right, I should probably Google it sometime, but you know. I rated all of them 5 stars just because I enjoy them so much and I like the premise and just everything about it. I should probably start it off by kind of saying that I'm not like a huge fan of manga and anime because from what I've seen, like a lot of it, I don't really know how to describe it. I guess there's certain stereotypes in there, like a brainless girl who's just, I don't want to say a whore, but like a whore, and just will do anything for like to get the dude's attention, and you know, she just lives for the man, and she would, you know, I just or just in general, even when there weren't girls like that, it was just girls that were like super sexualized. It just made me a bit uncomfortable because it was always like, you know, girls can wear things that aren't crop tops and mini skirts, you know, like girls can wear other things. Those clothes do exist, believe it or not. I feel like the whole anime industry or whatever needs to hear that, as well as the K-pop like female industry. Believe it or not, that's the thing. How did this turn into a rant about like feminism? I digress. Oh my god. So with all that said, hopefully that makes sense. I don't really know what else to say. I enjoyed Black Butler so much because it sort of doesn't have those tropes. I mean, it centres around a 13-year-old boy who has summoned a demon, and they're in a contract to essentially the demon will get to eat his soul once the boy has managed to get revenge on the people who murdered his family. And the demon is posing as his butler so people don't like get suspicious, I guess. So it centres around these 2 dudes, and CL, the boy, obviously he's too young to really have any of that weird like sexual stuff go on. CL is engaged to this girl called Lizzie, but she's also very young, so it's not like she's super sexualized or anything. And she's also, as much as she does come off as this girl who's just like there to marry him, you also do find out that she's not just this girl that's there to marry him. Like, she's not a girl that just exists for the purpose of, you know, just being his like fiance, you know. She has like her own kind of character arc and everything, so I really appreciated that. I guess the thing that I was like trying to say about Lizzie was that even though she's like devoted to him, because I managed to like completely miss this part out when I was filming my original video, even though she's like pretty devoted to CL, she's also got kind of her own character as well, but also it's like more understandable that she's devoted to him because she's like 13 years old, and when you're 13 you're just like, you know, 13. You're not like a 24-year-old woman who is shoving her boobs in this dude's face to get his attention. Like, you know, Lizzie wasn't doing that, but she was still pretty devoted to CL in like a way that I'd say wasn't like the best, but I found it understandable, so I didn't find it like annoying or like frustrating like I would if it was like an adult doing that. Not to mention like, because this is set in like Victorian London, because she'll have been told like her whole life and stuff that she's just got to marry this dude and that she's supposed to serve him and stuff. I don't know, it just made more sense to me. And I'm saying this as someone who doesn't watch a lot of anime or anything, so there maybe I just watched like the wrong kind of things. Like in Death Note, you know, there was that stupid girl called Misa who was just obsessed with light, and like she literally was just there because she wanted to date him and like serve him, and it was just like, dude. But I digress once again. I just appreciated the way that it was handled, and maybe, I don't know if Yana Taboso is a man or a woman. I'm gonna Google it. Okay, yeah, she is a woman. That makes more sense now. I don't know, maybe all the mangas and stuff I've tried to read before have been written by dudes. Yeah, I just appreciated the fact that all the women in this were, besides the whores, that like the hookers that one Chinese tradesman dude has, they were all like fairly like strong characters. You know, they weren't just flimsy little like things that wanted dudes and that was their life goal. Not to mention just like the relationship like between Ciel and the demon Sebastian. It's just like chef's kiss, everything about it, and like the story and the plot. Oh, it's just, and just Sebastian and just everything. Oh, I don't know how to like articulate my thoughts beyond the fact that I think I appreciated this so much because it didn't just like stick women in there and make them into useless things. I just appreciated the fact that it didn't do that, and it had like a plot that wasn't romance orientated, which is something that I just prefer, because most of the time when I read romance it's bullshit, which I will get into in a minute. I'm not else to say about this, I just loved it and I gave them all 5 stars. I could probably talk about this for hours, but nothing would really coherently make sense. So yeah, I would really recommend picking it up. I'm reading it very legally online with the link my friend sent me. Very legally. I have so much to say, I just can't say anymore. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna go. Next, I'm actually gonna talk about my least favourite books. I'm gonna get it out of the way instead of like having my video end with my least favourite book. I was recommended this book called Wolf Song by TJ Klune. This is the first in a series called Green Creek, and it centres around like this dude called Oxnard, which is just an awful name by the way, who essentially just like one day he meets this 10-year-old boy, and this 10-year-old boy turns out to be a werewolf, and he's like imprinted on Ox, so they're like soulmates and shit. That's just basically, you know, it's just their romance. I was recommended this by my online friend Holly. Well, all I can say is, well, if she ever sees my videos, what the fuck do you read, dude? Like, what the fuck, man? Oh god, I'm gonna do a review on this, although I didn't actually take any notes while I was listening to the audiobook of this book, and I have no intention of going back and making notes because, oh my god, I just don't want to relive this fucking bullshit, man. Like, I'd have loved to say I like it, but it was just so fucking weird. I thought everything about this book was bad. I thought the writing was bad. I thought the characters weren't very interesting. I thought the relationship was toxic. Not to mention, the things started getting sexual when Joe was underage. Joe was the little werewolf boy. Joe was underage, he was 17, and Ox was 23. Ox started having like sexual thoughts about him. And I'm just like, okay, I know they didn't do anything sexual, but it's still fucking weird. Not to mention, there was weird themes of like beastiality or whatever you want to call it in it, which I'm just not down with. If you want to do that, cool, but I think it's disgusting. It disgusts me. But if you want to do that, you know, you don't have to listen to me. I'm a random person on the internet and we'll never meet. It's cool. Good. The villain I thought was very forced. I don't know how to like describe it, but he just felt forced and like just weird. The plot kind of was just weird and like it jumped. There was a lot of time cuts and I didn't enjoy that. The sex scene was like, oh my god, you could tell, like, no woman would write a sex scene like that. I have read fan fiction about, like, knotting and all that ABO stuff that is better, that is more sexy than this. Like, they used the word spunk in the sex scene, and I'm like, spunk isn't a sexy word. What the fuck are you doing? I just hated this book so much. I'm just gonna stop here and save it for the review. I just despised it. I despised everything about it. It's just awful. Oh my god. It was just weird, and the relationship was toxic, and there was like possessive themes, because there's always fucking possessive themes when dogs are involved. Moving on. We're gonna go on to a book I enjoyed. I listened to the audiobook. I also have a physical copy of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. To be honest, I'm like in between about this book, because I feel like as much as like I enjoyed it, I also didn't quite like the way it ended. I feel like I wanted more, but maybe that was the point. But I don't know, it just ended like almost abruptly, I felt, especially because I watched the movie right afterwards, and the movie literally ended like so quickly, and I was like, dang, fine. I guess that's just it. If you don't know, I assume most people know, but this follows this family of sisters. The main character is a woman called Elizabeth Bennet. How do I even summarise this book, man? Turns out I couldn't summarise the book, because here I am, future me. This book follows the Bennet family, who have like 3, 4, 5 daughters, I don't know, a bunch of daughters, a lot of them, and no sons, and not like a whole lot of money, because apparently their estate is gonna go to their cousin when their dad dies, because, I don't know, olden days things. So naturally their mother, Mrs. Bennet, she's kind of obsessed with finding them husbands so they don't like get thrown out on the street or something Once again, olden days things. The eldest sister, I think it's the eldest, Elizabeth, is the main character, and you know, she's just living her life, it's fine and dandy, until one day this dude called Mr. Bingley, like, buys an estate that is, like, in their area, and he's, like, single as fuck, and Mrs. Bennet is like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get one of my daughters married off to him because he's rich. And so as like the family becomes acquainted with Mr. Bingley, who is a very nice dude, Elizabeth kind of starts to form a strong dislike towards his friend Mr. Darcy, who is this standoffish rich dude who seems kind of, yeah, rude as fuck. She doesn't like him. But who would have thought that maybe, just maybe, they end up like liking each other? Mind blown. Okay, I'm done now, bye. I gave it 3 stars, and I don't have like a whole lot to say about it. Like, I enjoyed the story and it was good, and I do like Mr. Darcy's character and Elizabeth's character, and I like how I just thought it was good, and they're just, you know, it was a good story. I would recommend reading it. I did have a little bit of trouble like understanding sometimes like what they were saying, like the whole drama that went down with Mr. Wickham. I got a bit distracted and confused. I didn't even know what I didn't know what he'd done like wrong. All I know is that he'd done something wrong, and but I hadn't like understood what he'd done wrong, so I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention at the right time. But yeah, I don't have anything to say about this book. I enjoyed it. I think people should stop trying to make people marry their cousins. I know that's what they did in the olden days, but cousins, man. Yeah, so I read Pride and Prejudice. The next book I read was You by Carolyn Kepner. I don't know how to say that last name, or if that's how you say it. I heard there's some funny pronunciation, but I'm too lazy to Google that. This follows a man called Joe Goldberg, who ends up stalking this woman called Beck, and like sniffing her pants and going into her like house and, you know, killing all the people around her because he's insane. Like, that's just what happens in the book. It just goes through all this stuff. I really enjoyed the TV show when I watched it, but I just don't think it's a story that like is a good book. I think I gave this 2 stars. I'm not entirely sure. I just don't think it really translates very well because there's so much, like, we're just in Joe's head, and like what pissed me off was like this never-ending sentence is what I'd call it, because it was like, I did this and I did this and I did this and like so many ands. Like, I kind of understood like this is a train of thought, like that's how it's being written, but it's fucking annoying. I don't care about these trains of thought. These trains of thought can crash and burn. And also he like talks about pussy juice like way too much. But there was just like so much bullshit in this book, and it was just like a weird narrative. Plus like some things the TV show just got like so much better, and it just made more sense, or just was more interesting. Because there's just this one part of the book where Joe hurts someone and that person is unconscious, and he takes them into like this taxi cab, and the taxi is like, oh, you know, you need to go to the hospital, right? And Joe's like, no. And the taxi driver's just like, meh, okay. And he takes Joe like to, you know, wherever Joe wants. Do people really do that? Like, you just like they just let him take the body, and they didn't like even call the police afterwards, and it was just a really long book, and like bits of it just dragged, and like the characters were all kind of just like annoying and weird. I did read a review that essentially talked about like how Joe was too right, because Joe had like this kind of thing where he'd see people that were like Beck's friends, and he'd go, oh my god, this person is a horrible person, they're like manipulating you, they're doing this, and then he'd turn out to be right about it. Whereas like what would have been more convincing, and I agree with this, what would have been more convincing like of like him being like this paranoid, delusional, like serial killer, stalker kind of dude, you know, is if he'd been wrong. Because if he's wrong, that like you see the insanity there, but he was right about all these people like being evil and awful, and it's just kind of like, I mean, I get it's supposed to show like that people are dicks, but it's kind of like it just would have been like a much more interesting story to see him manage to fabricate like these stories about people, and then it be just bullshit that he'd made up because he's paranoid. So yeah, I found the writing insufferable. They talked about pussy juice too much, way too much. I love the TV series, but the book is just, it just does not work as a book. You'd think I'd talk more about the characters, but there's nothing to say about them because they all don't really have much of a character. And that's all I have to say about that. The next book I read, well actually I read this one like first I think, but that's not the point. Let me talk. Is Not If I Save You First by Ali Carter. I've read quite a lot of Ali Carter books because I used to read them when I was younger. I found like a big, like huge collection of her stuff in a charity shop one day and I just bought them all and then I binge read them all. I've read the Gallagher Girls series and the High Society novels, and they're just so easy to read, which this was still very easy to read. And it was also interesting, there were a few hints saying like, oh, this is in the Gallagher Girls like universe, which I thought was cool. This follows a girl called Maddie. Her name is Maddie. This follows a girl called Maddie who was essentially taken to like the wilderness of Alaska by her dad, who used to be the bodyguard of the President of the United States. Maddie used to be the president's son's best friend. Now she's in Alaska and she's been surviving there for years because of something that happened that made her dad like quit being a bodyguard. So she has no friends, she has no contact with her best friend, the president's son, who is called Logan, until one day, due to circumstances, Logan gets sent to live with her. He's being a spoiled brat in like America, and so they're like, you know what, you're gonna go and live in Alaska and learn some fucking manners. And then he gets kidnapped by a Russian and it is Maddie's job to save him before the Russian manages to take him away, you know. I really like the premise of the book and everything, and I like the characters, although there was kind of like an insta-lovey kind of thing that went on. Like the moment Logan like saw Maddie right after the helicopter landed in Alaska, he like looked at her lips and he was like, oh my god, those are soft lips. And I'm like, okay, just chill. The ending just kind of didn't make much sense to me. I mean, it made sense, but it was just underwhelming. I had like this whole like theory thing worked out and I failed to take into account the fact that this is like a kind of young adult book. It doesn't have complex plots like my brain does, because I had like a whole thing worked out. Like I was like, oh my god, this is going to happen and it's going to turn out that this person's betrayed them and this is why he's getting kidnapped by Russians and this is why the Russians knew where he was. And then it was like, nah dude, it's just this other thing. So I was disappointed. I didn't really have much to say about this book. It takes place over like 2 to 3 days, I think, which is basically them obviously trying to survive in the wild, this Russian aiming to get Logan to like this meeting point for his own personal reasons. I don't know, I liked the book. I thought it was enjoyable, but I thought the ending could have been better because my ending was better. The ending that I came up with was better, and that's all I have to say. The last book that I read in February is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This follows a girl called Lara Jean who, whenever she falls in love, she writes the boys a love letter and she like puts that letter in a hat box and keeps like them all on her shelf. She is Korean American, like I guess half Korean because her dad is white and her mum was Korean. And then one day what happens is Lara Jean's letters, all 5 of her love letters, get sent to the boys that, you know, she loved. And so now she's just got to deal with this mess. And she currently has a crush on one of the boys. But when he asks her about it, she lies and says she's dating one of the other boys, who's this dude called Peter, and he's like the popular kid in school. And basically, her and Peter end up making an arrangement for like various reasons that they will pretend to date each other. And who the fuck would have guessed it? They end up actually liking each other. Oh my god. Lara Jean is like unbearably naive. The part that like comes to mind when like I think of her naiveness, because she's like 16, I think. I'm pretty sure she's 16 or 17 years old. She says, like, her and her sister, like, when they were younger, like, much younger, made, like, this pact, like, to never have sex until, like after college or something. Like, sex until something. They won't have sex. Neither of them will. They made this pact when they were, like, really young or something, and Lara Jean just, like, actually expects her sister to keep that pact. And she's, like, surprised when her sister goes back on it. Like, bruh, you were, like, 13 when you made that. Nobody makes pacts like that. Like, it was just stupid. And she was like really surprised when she found out her sister had had sex, even though her sister's had a boyfriend for ages. Honestly, like my feelings about this book are very meh. I really understand like why people could like this book though, because it's like you can read the book really quickly, even though nothing much happens in the book. Like no, there's no like kind of driving force. Lara Jean doesn't want to do anything. She's not like got a goal in the book, besides to like hide the fact that she likes this person called Josh. Besides that, it's not really like, there's no goal. She doesn't have like a, oh my god, I want to achieve this. It's just kind of like, I'm living life. Nothing much happens. I think the thing that most like impacted me about the book was the story of like how her mum died. You know, normally in books it's like, oh my god, my mum died in a car crash, she was killed by a serial killer. Crap that's just like, okay, just chill. It doesn't have to be a dramatic death every time. And I think this book did it really well, because it literally just like, it covered like how her mum died pretty quickly in the beginning of the book, and it just basically says that her mum fell over one day and she hit her head on the counter and she was fine for like a few hours, and then she went to have a nap and she just never woke up. And I was just like, wow. She was there 1 minute and then she was gone. It was impactful in a way that like someone dying in a car crash just isn't anymore, because everyone's parents seem to die in car crashes now, and I'm just like, no, not every fictional character loses parents in car crashes, okay? Have it be something different. So I just really liked that part of the book. Besides that, I just thought Lara Jean was annoying, and like, I just have very like in the middle feelings about this book, so I don't have a lot to say about it at all. Like, it just exists and I don't care that it exists. I find Lara Jean kind of annoying, but she's not like to the extent of annoying that like young adult protagonists normally are. But I understand like why people like it. There's something just like very nice about like the book overall. Although I will say, the writing of this book, it's just annoyed me. It was like so simple. There's so many instances in the book where it's like I jumped up and down and clapped my hands in excitement. Not only does that make me cringe, but it's like, I don't know, it just feels like a stupid sentence. It's kind of like those telling sentences that don't show anything, so it doesn't really make me feel a lot. So I was just kind of like, yeah. Besides the writing and the fact that Lara Jean annoys me and the fact that there's no like real plot to it, I'm just like, meh. Like, it's just a meh book. Like, I understand why people enjoy it, but like I just don't know. So yeah, that is the end of this video. I have nothing else to say. The video is over now. Goodbye, and as always, I'm reading.